my opponents too much, but the more I tested the card, the more I saw how absolutely insane it is. You can drop it right away. You can drop it off of a Soul Ring or a Crypt because it's colorless completely in cost. So, another card that's yet again good at pretty much every phase of the game. Cabal Ritual fixes us into triple black, which means he sets up our Ad Nauseam and our Grim Tutor and our Necropotence and our Doomsday. Oh, there's where they're hiding. Over here. Anyway, very, very strong. We constantly fill our graveyard with cards, so it can very easily net us all these yummy black symbols down here. That is a net of 3 and filters an extra black, so 5 black mana, which is insane. I think I already mentioned this, but part of the reason that it's so important to play a black ritual and not the 2 mana cost red rituals that just do this top part is not only that they'll never have this awesome threshold, but producing lots of red in this deck is similar to producing brown. Like, Seething Song is still playable because it nets us 2. Nets us 3 if we have Helm Awakening, but yeah. I don't play those because the color fix of them really doesn't matter at all, and netting 1 for 1 turn is not that strong when it's pretty much just colorless mana. I mean, it's just like a really bad mana vault or something, or like, you know, a Soul Ring's worth of mana for a turn, which isn't horrible, I guess, but it's not necessarily something I'm too excited about either. Merchant Scroll, on the other hand, it does float my boat. It gets pretty much every super strong card in this deck that we'd want to draw every game. Okay, that's not true, but it gets enough of them. It can get our High Tide or our Turnabout for that part of our chain. It can go Intuition or Mystical Tutor if it wants to get something that it can't get. It can go get Mana Drain when we're trying to make a large tempo play against a deck that we think is going to make a strong play, and we need some extra mana for our turn. It can go get our Force of Will if we already have a great hand. It can go get a cantrip if what we need is a cantrip for our Doomsday. It can pretty much get us nearly anything we need in most situations. If we just need a hard tutor and we don't want the intuition, we can always go get a Lim-Dûl's Vault. It gets it done. Very, very strong card. Reason it's restricted in one of the most powerful, well, the most powerful format in the game, because it's very, very strong and grabs enough good stuff that this is just blue Demonic Tutor. Okay. Lim-Dûl's Vault. It's kind of like a double cost Vamp Tutor, and even at twice its cost, it's still worth playing. It's nice that it gets around things like Aven Mindcensor. The ability to stack top 5 in addition to go get whatever card you were thinking you were going to get is incredibly powerful. Sometimes you'll get lucky and you'll get a stack of 5 that somehow solves the problem you were in better than you could have ever imagined with a single card, and you get to keep some kind of insane pile. But 9 times out of 10, you're going to pay, you know, 5 to 10 life to find whatever you would have got with your Demonic Tutor, but it's still good enough. One of the few cards in the deck we can pitch to our Chrome Mox and tap for 2 colors. Not the strongest tutor in the game because of the damage, kind of fights with our Ad Nauseam, which isn't good. And it's 2 and doesn't go into the hand, so it's not the best tutor, but it's definitely playable, and we're definitely going to use it because it can find any card in our deck. It does get around things that other tutors can't, and it's just a very strong overall card and makes our tutor proportions correct, and it's stronger than any other tutor I think I could play that I'm not using. I guess it's worth noting I took out Muddle of the Mixture because a 3 mana conditional tutor almost every time with a slightly other use mode that I guess is good, so it makes it good. Just wasn't good because it was pretty much always just a 3 mana crappy tutor. So you don't see that card in this list anymore. Not that it's a bad card. It's a good budget option. The number of times it was just a eats my Demonic Tutor costs 5 to, you know, play Demonic Tutor felt strictly worse than Diabolic Tutor was far too many for my tastes. Anyway, Demonic Tutor, one or the other most broken cards in the game. Into hand, any card you want. This card is literally good at every phase of the game. It's good in every combo deck ever made. And our deck is no exception. We'll probably cast it twice with Yawgmoth's Will because it's so good. Yes, we will. Grape Shot. Having kill conditions is very, very important to your deck having resiliency. It makes it easier for you to hit. Sometimes you can just take one player out of the game, but having additional kill conditions makes it much harder for you to kill yourself when you're trying to take the best line. We want to be able to exile cards. We want to be able to pitch things to our graveyard and open them up to get hit by graveyard hate. We don't want them to get graveyard hated, but we want to be able to use those lines to efficiently go off. So having extra win conditions is very important. I personally hate the Carcosa Sacrament, so I always put in like at least 3 or more than 3 unique kill conditions nowadays, just because I hate that card. I think one of my Doomsday builds could have been completely and totally neutered with just a single extract. Like, I don't like that paper thin feeling. I don't like feeling like if I get a bad hand, or if someone takes some cards out of my deck, or Mesmeric Orb plus Leyline of the Void happen to mill 3 of the wrong cards, I just can't win anymore. I don't like that feeling. And when you're playing cards that are this broken, that just shouldn't be the case. In addition, it kind of fills the role of a Wrath in this deck. Our games are over so quickly that just being able to blow off all the mana dorks and hate bears is more than good enough. A couple games ago, I used it to kill a Nekusar. I killed an Aven Mind Sensor with it a game before that. It was against some random green deck that just had lots of mana elves, and I just blew all his mana elves off the board in one of the other games. So it's actually fairly strong in other parts of the game, considering we have almost no creature removal in this deck, and the deck plans to win so fast, and it is so easy to cast so many cards. Especially, something as simple as just, cantrip, generic ramp rock into Grape Shot. I can pick off 3 dudes sometimes. So 3 for 1 value seems pretty good. Gives me an additional kill condition, so I can, toss my tendrils away early. Very good. If I need to use Yawgmoth's Will on turn 3 to get the most efficient line, and I whiff out, I need to still have a way to kill everybody. I want to feel like me whiffing is putting me in a position where now I have twice as many permanents on the board as I did before, and a perfect grip of cards in my hand. Not I exiled my kill cons and whiffed out, and I've just lost. So it's very important, and this is part of the reason it's worth splashing red. The main reason we splash red is for Grape Shot, Wheel, and Past in Flames. These are the 3 best red cards in the deck. As you see, I rank Wheel above Time Twister. So that's probably, like, you could splash red to play Wheel. There's other red cards I've considered. Like, to be honest, I haven't done as much testing with cards like Mana Flare as I probably should have, but my list is so tight right now, I really don't care, and I think changing one card either way, one way or the other, with something else wouldn't make a massive difference. And at this point, the things I'd have to cut would make something awkward, or just be a side grade, I think. Either way, Grape Shot very strong. We'll go straight into another win condition, which is Laboratory Maniac. He makes it so Doomsday is just a card that just wins in this deck. I really like comboing Doomsday with Future Sight or any other cantrip in the deck, from Preordained to Cataxen Probe to Brainstorm. You get a cantrip plus Doomsday, and you have the mana to cast it, maybe 1 or 2 more, and you can win. Drawing Doomsday off ad nauseum, it's very easy to win. If you get it with lots of mana, you can do it protected almost no matter what. You don't really need to build around this card a whole lot. You do Laboratory Maniac to make it super efficient. If you have stupidly insane amounts of mana, one of my favorite ways to win with this is not lab mana, if I'm just showboating, is to Mind's Desire, Tide Sprout, and Tendrils, and whatever I'm missing for my infinite bounce, and just use Doomsday into infinite Tendrils, so I can pretend I'm playing Doomsday Legacy Tendrils. Good times. Either way, having a card that reads black, 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 plus a couple mana win the game seems fairly good to me. Yeah, you don't have to build around it nearly as much as I originally thought. And the more I play with this card, which I think if I have a favorite card in Magic, it is definitely Doomsday. I'm almost positive it's my favorite card ever. There's just so many cool things to think about. I can spend hours just thinking about piles to make with this card and keep myself completely and totally satisfied, not even playing the game. That's how I know I can love a card. Being able to see exactly what you have to do and having your line be clear is very nice. Being able to see lines and make efficient piles with simple math that other people missed is very satisfying for me. It's just a very, very fun card, very, very powerful card, very, very degenerate card. Though it can be very all-in at times, as long as you're playing it in a very intelligent manner and you understand the risk you're taking when you're playing the card, and you know what your opponents could possibly have, you should end up with a good result. I think it's more than worth losing maybe 1 or 2 control slots in this deck, and then crappy cantrip or mana slot to just be able to draw a card that just says win in the same way that Ad Nauseam does. In fact, even faster and cheaper if you get the correct cards. So there's that package. That's about all I'm going to say about it for now. Grim Tutor. Diabolic Tutor is a card that I consider pretty much unplayable, and Grim Tutor is a card I consider fairly staple. So as you can see, the difference between broken, staple, and unplayable is not much. I feel like if this card didn't have a second black in its cost, it would be significantly stronger, because you could cast it off some of the colorless things. You wouldn't need to have hit a second black source to cast it if you're on double island. But I can cast it off my Gilded Lotus, I can cast it off my Dark Ritual. Just having another hard tutor that gets you anything is very important in this deck. At 3, it's manageable. It's by no means a necessary piece of the deck. If you don't happen to own one, it's not nearly as big as the hit as you're taking when you lose the Imperial Seal. Losing just a single card like Imperial Seal, you will definitely feel it. Losing Grim Tutor, not so much. I mean, it's a strong card, but sometimes it's wheel for 6. It's not super strong. By the time you get to 3 mana, you're on at least turn 2 if you had a really good ramp opener at like 0, but possibly turn 3, and when it's not doing anything to net you any sort of advantage, it's fairly slow. But because it gets anything and we need to have a certain number of cards to find everything, we're going to play it. It's not super strong, but there's nothing better than it. It's not like the worst card in the deck or anything, but it's like not, top 20 or something like that, to where its price tag is pretty much just based on its rarity. It's definitely replaceable if you can't afford it. Seething Song, because we're splashing red, we're playing this card because it nets 2. Net 2 Ritual is always good. And I don't know, it's not a card I'm excited about, or I'm splashing red to play Seething Song, but because I'm in red, I'm going to play Seething Song, Good to cast twice off of a Past in Flames, especially since Past in Flames can't hit our mana rocks. Just as good off Yawgmoth's Will, obviously. Yes. Intuition. Intuition is one of my favorite tutors ever. There's so many interesting pokery type things you can do with this card. From the order you reveal the cards to your opponents, to making them completely different, to piling tutors, to getting exactly what you want. This card has a lot of mind games going on with it, and I just love the amount of thinking that goes into cards like this for both you and your opponent. I think this is a fairly good design in that way. It combos incredibly well with Yawgmoth's Will, being able to grab us our turnabout High Tide Tech, and then anything else we need to go off, anything we want in our yard, with a Yawgmoth's Will. I mean, if they don't even have an answer, like their hands are gone or something, or if they're all tapped out, you could grab an LED. I probably wouldn't do that most of the time. It'd probably be more something like this, or even more likely, let's say like this. This is probably stupidly powerful pile. If I had a floating mana, like if I had next to it, would probably be this instead, so I could just get whatever I wanted. That's one of my favorite combos. These two cards, it's just an insane combo. You're just always going to win off something like that. If you want to skip the middleman, you can just do this. Except then they're probably just going to hand you this, which you'd think is bad, but now you can cast all the cards in your hand and potentially cast this first, but usually you won't have the mana for that, so I'd rather almost do this. Actually, the best is probably this, because now they don't want to give you the Demonic Tutor, and you can get to hand Mind's Desire from your yard anyway, but just depends on the situation, I guess, or if you've used one and one's already banned or something like that. In addition, early in the game you can go, okay, Mana Vault, Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, or you can go High Tide, Dark Ritual, Mana Crypt, or you can go Mana Drain, Ad Nauseam. You can just start messing with them. They don't know which effect you really want. Just something completely different, and you think you can confuse them. Like, I'm going to put up Mana Drain, High Tide, and Ad Nauseam, and they're going, huh? Which card does he need? And odds are anyone is fine. If we need a specific card, we can just go Tutor, 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 and if I open black/blue source, no matter what, I'm going to get whatever I want in my hand, and I'm going to have tutors to feed, so if I just pile tutors, I can pile tutors, grab Yogg-Will all my tutors back out, grab these by hand while building Storm, and then use the last one to go get Mind's Desire. Yeah. Fun times with tutors. Okie dokie. Necropotence. I guess I'll go over Necropotence before I go over these wheels. Necropotence is broken. I'm actually fairly surprised this is still a legal card with the way they ban things. I really am. It's just dumb anytime it's ever cast in any deck. I guess it's annoying that when you discard cards you have to exile them, but as I said, I built this deck in a way that I'm not going to have that be a major issue. There's going to be lines no matter what. I've played other decks where you open with top and then you'll go into library and you'll play Necro turn 3 and then now your first two cards didn't mean shit, but it doesn't matter because you just laid a turn 3 Necro and you're just going to get there. You're going to draw. In this deck you're going to overdraw. You're going to be going for free mana sources and cheap counters, and you overdraw again, then you just win. It's really that simple. If you have to kill your own Necropotence, you can just bounce it with a Chain of Vapor or something like that. I mean, it almost never really comes down to that. Reliquary Tower quickly becomes a tutor target with this out, because if you can just fill your hands, like an Ad Nauseam hit in this deck will not typically put 30 cards in my grip. I just need 15 or something like that to win. Like, there's no need to pull my curve down that low and make it so dumbed down that I draw just a zillion cards in my deck. I want my cards to be good whenever I draw them. So in that vein, drawing off Necropotence or like a Notion Wheel will typically give me more cards and make it even easier to go off. So slamming this early is a free win. Always a good backup plan. If I need like big card draw off my intuition, I can pull this and this and this. Maybe I'll throw in a side of this sometimes instead. It just depends. If I have a High Tide in my hand, this will probably go in the pile over something else first. Could possibly even be the Necro if it's not really what I'm looking for. If I have a High Tide, it's probably not. If I have a High Tide, it's probably like this. It just depends. That's why this card's so awesome. I just love doing things with it. Windfall, Time Twister, Wheel. We've talked about them a lot. These cards are insane power level at 3. This card sometimes will get you less cards, which makes it a little weaker sometimes. But post ad nauseum, it can get you, like if you whiff somehow and you have a windfall and you can cast it, you can be like, let's try again, which is kind of funny. So even though there are phases when it's not optimal compared to these two, it's still very strong. I would say it has the benefit of dumping cards in your graveyard to set up Yawgmoth's Will or Past in Flames. Though the fact that Time Twister shuffles is actually really nice as well. It's kind of nice to have both. As I talked about before, Notion Twister is a better way to finish, especially when you've eaten through, like almost every card in your deck with a Mind's Desire. You could very easily have only 10, 12 cards left in your deck after setting up a play like that. Obviously, they play really nicely with this card. At any time I have one of these cards, I can now tutor for this card. And now I have I get 29 cards, everyone else gets Mind Twisted, let's see if I can win, type scenario. And since it's going 4 into 3, we're going to have at least 2 open land mana. And we're going to be drawing more cards with ad nauseum. So we're probably just going to win on turn while they all have nothing in their hand, if they don't just, scoop to this combo. They set up some of the best refills in this deck, being very land light. These cards let you run way less lands. Even just playing 3 lands and casting Wheel is fine by me. I will bin my whole hand if it's bad. Just play a Wheel and I'll be happy as lamb. Because I have a good chance of just hitting a turn 4 win, and even if it's a slow hand, a turn 5 win, right behind it with maybe a couple control cards to try to glue that other turn that I just opened up for my other players out. It's good value when you're playing this few lands, because they probably still had land drops in their hand to make and cards to play as well, and we didn't have any, most likely. But playing one of these turn 1 or 2 off a lot of ramp is pretty much what sets the stage for the next phase of the game. Typically, the way this deck pilots correctly, optimally, or how it's designed is you get one of these cheap ramp spells or something early, then you go straight into a Wheel after you get maybe a little more value for free, or possibly make a second play, and then you go right into one of these larger, more powerful draw spells that either leave you with more mana or give you more cards, and then from there you have a critical mass of cards and mana where you can storm off. So these cards are essential. Missing even a single one of these cards really hurts. It is worth splashing red just to play Wheel of Fortune. There is nothing better you can splash for in another color than Wheel of Fortune. It is that good. There's a reason this card is restricted in so many formats. When I played the most degenerate deck I've ever played was here, right on MTGO when they had the Format Classic, and I could play 4 of these and this. This didn't exist yet. That's the reason there was no Vintage. I played 4 of these and this. That's where I played Gush with Fast Bond. The deck could win turn 1 all day long. In fact, I used to play games where I'd start with 10 cards, and I won 95% of the time with that deck because of Windfall with 10 cards. Like, it's just a broken thing to be able to draw 7 for 3. It's just not fair. And we abuse it better than almost any other deck. One of the things I learned from playing that deck, when I first built the deck, I had lots of Memory Jar and all these wheel effects, and I played, what's it called? The straight upgrade to Megrim for 2. The Liliana's Caress. And I was playing Liliana's Caress when I first started playing the deck, and then I realized it wouldn't win off a single wheel. I'm going to compare this to Nekusar now. Even though it was still very strong because you're playing these cards, the strategy is strong in Nekusar because it plays these wheels. The Nekusar strategy is strong because drawing 7 is a good strategy. But the way it wins from putting the other permanents into play is inefficient as compared to Storm, because you get to make such a more tight package. And something I learned even playing that deck is it was much easier to just flip a Mind's Desire for my entire deck and tendril someone to death than it was to try to squeeze out another Pro Deck card and then continue to wheel. It just was easier to make more mana and keep going and then finish with a single card. And the same holds true in Commander. I think I've covered my... Frantic Search. Frantic Search is the one of the best untaps that you unconditionally play in the High Tide package. It lets you filter through your deck at any time, kind of like Candlebraw. It lets you filter colorless mana to colored. It will let you draw cards off the top of your deck off your tutors essentially for free, and it will act as a ritual post High Tide. And it can sometimes do these things both at the exact same time, making it incredibly, incredibly powerful later in the game, and never a bad draw early in the game. So, good cards there. I'm missing a 4-drop. Notion Thief, Past in Flames, Tendrils. Where's my other 4-drop? I think there's another 4-drop. There's definitely another 4-drop. What is it? Why can't I think of it? Tendrils. Did I move it over here? Okay. Since I can't find it, we're going to resort. Turnabout. Duh. I knew it was something important. Duh. Okay. Turnabout is our main combo card with High Tide. It'll let us get insane amounts of mana off of our Yawgmoth Chain. It's also just a very good card for just making mana in its own right if you have extra lands or if the game went longer. You can use it just to untap, Guild Lotus and Sol Ring and some stuff if you nuked all your lands with the Chain of Vapor. But it's just one of those large ritual effects that lets me kind of ignore having to find things like Dark Ritual or have a very high concentration of rituals in my deck when I can just use this little combo here from Spiral Tide and Legacy to get enough mana to get my Storm count up into Mind's Desire or any other win condition in the deck. Notion Thief. Notion Thief is a card that combos with all my wheels. That's the main reason I play this card. Against other decks like a Mirror, he's very strong. Anything else that plays Mirror, like the Nekusar or something like that, you can just win the game for 4 mana. There's not a lot of times we want to keep 4 mana up and pass. There are those times where we don't have anything to cast. We have quite a bit of value to cast it. Converted mana cost 5, and quite often you pass on the 4 mana, not doing anything, maybe sitting behind whatever counter spell or control you happen to draw, just waiting to make another land drop or something, and keeping Notion Thief up then, and then even casting him for value, means that no matter what your next play is, to try to further your game plan, you now have something on the field that at any time can mind twist all your opponents and instantly win you the game at the same time. Doesn't get much better than that. Also one of the only cards that I can bin to my Chrome box for 2 mana if he's not part of my efficient line. So, good backup kill condition, good synergy with what my deck is doing. Not bad to value cast off someone else's draw spell, though the situations where that would occur are actually fairly rare. As I've said before, I don't mind having a card or 2 in my hand that's not optimal at every phase of the game if it's devastatingly powerful in certain situations, and this card definitely falls into that category. Past in Flames is one of the reasons we splash red. Yawgmoth's Will effects are insanely powerful in this deck. I think I might have already said Yawgmoth's Will is probably the most powerful card in this deck in its own right, just because of the insane synergy it has. Past in Flames, as I mentioned before with the mill thing, is good in that you can just wheel it away early, and then you just have a Yawgmoth just sitting in your graveyard. Well, not quite a Yawgmoth. You can't, bring all your 0-cost rocks back and stuff. But just being able to flash back your High Tide tech or your tutors is insanely strong, and will typically get you there, especially in hands with lots of mana. It's very good to have a second Yawgmoth's Will type effect for if you want to blow your Yawgmoth's Will early for whatever reason, get a tutor back, you're fighting through control. It's good to have another effect that does the same thing. And then most importantly, our main kill condition for the deck is Tendrils, dealing twice as much damage as Grape Shot, as well as healing We can cast a many tendrils early for value just to gain back health. We can cast a many tendrils if we whiff on Ad Nauseam so that we don't die on passing, possibly taking out the strongest player. It is an all-in-one kill condition to where we just play all the other cards in the deck that are already good in pretty much every combo shell in Commander, and it just compacts our win to one 4-mana card that just says win. It's difficult to interact with. It can't be killed like a creature combo. It puts lots of copies of the spells on the stack, though if they had a counter spell, they probably should have used it in one of our neighbors earlier in the chain. Just a very, very, very powerful kill condition that's been used in almost every Storm deck since this card was printed. This is the win. Already talked about Gush, already talked about Force of Will. Tezzeret. Tezzeret, not necessarily on the super strong side of things at converted mana cost 5. I guess I'll talk about Gilded Lotus at the same time. They're almost a package. Not exactly. Tezzeret acts as a, like, I guess I'll say, 5th sort of kill condition, having lots of artifacts in the deck to where we can put a fast clack on somebody if we've exiled most of our other ones. His main ability is to tutor up artifacts or untap them. The reason I really like him is because you can curve into him off some of your ramp when you get him in your opening hand, and even though that might seem a little slow at times, being able to drop him on turn 2 or 3 is actually very strong. Even turn 4, if the deck is going slow, setting up a Tezzeret will almost always set up a kill on the next turn. Post Ad Nauseam, it's very easy to cast him for free with Storm. In fact, sometimes he will ramp mana coming out, untapping things like Gilded Lotus or a Grim Monolith or anything that taps 3 plus Candelabra. Being able to fetch Candelabra can sometimes straight ramp mana in chains. But you get 1 or 2 activations out of this guy and he's doing tons and tons of work for you. And having this ability to actually deal damage in the chamber is actually very strong. Gilded Lotus is a card that I think is very, very powerful because it can immediately tap for 3 colored, making it have really a net cost of 2 on turn. It's very easy to feed our large mana spells early, like our Mana Valor Dark Ritual I talked about earlier, into the Gilded Lotus. And then the Gilded Lotus can protect itself with almost anything in our protection package, cast any of our wheels for value, which I would much rather have something that needs to be removed than floating mana to possibly cast a spell. And it'll pretty much guarantee that I have the mana to get there right after my wheel, so they pretty much must kill my Gilded Lotus immediately. You can cast a tutor behind it. You can cast Doomsday or Necropotence with it. It fixes to triple color, which is great. It's great for casting our High Tide before we start untapping our lands and such. Just very, very powerful. Future Sight is one of my favorite cards in the entire deck. Future Sight is good at all times. It's pure card advantage off the top of your deck. It's where I miss my Azusa effects the most, is when I have a card like this out. It is the best Doomsday cantrip in the deck. Is this plus Doomsday will always just win you the game, even with nothing in your hand, no mana, nothing. It lets you do insane things. It has insane synergy with Mind's Desire, as with each flip, you can then cast instants in between. You can even remand your own Mind's Desire back into your hand off something off the top of your deck. Hits your turnabout in the middle. Any kind of tutor that comes to the top of the deck in the middle of Mind's Desire, you can then stick any instant you want on top to cast. If you hit like a Vamp or a Mystical, it combos with the Sensei's Divining Top as well. Pretty much, I am more than happy to tap out to a turn 3 Future Sight and then start going forward on turn 4, because it just has so many cheap ways to combo and win with it that you can have a line that does not make a lot of mana and still win with it in play. And it just takes you to Value Town either way. It's very good in grindy games. It's something your opponents should almost always kill right away. It just has way too much combo potential, way too much card advantage. It just does way too many silly things in this deck to stay around, and if it does, they're going to lose. Ad Nauseam is the strongest 5-drop in the deck. I think I've talked about it quite a bit. You simply cast it. It's the main path to victory. If you get the standard ideal hand and you just cantrip and tutor a couple times and play a couple ramp spells, your first tutor will probably hit ad nauseum. You either cast it on turn or you'll pass and cast it on someone else's turn based on the situation. If you think they know it's coming, sometimes it's better just cast it on turn and whiff, even if you think there's a good chance of whiffing, just to get a massive advantage, and your whiff is crafting a perfect hand, doubling, the amount of extra mana you put on the board, and setting up for a win the next turn is a whiff with ad nauseum. You could also just get lucky and just win on the spot. If you cast it on end step or someone else's turn before yours, you're pretty much always going to win. It is an instant speed win the game card for 5 mana. And there are many different lines we can take in this deck. It's the simplest, it's the easiest, and we built around it the most. Mind's Desire, our enabler kill card, the most broken Storm card ever printed. The closest thing you're ever going to get to a card that says Storm, draw a card, add a mana to your mana pool, in fact better. It's probably the best wheel in the deck in that it pretty much gets you at least a wheel when you cast it, except then you cast all the cards off of your wheel for free. Except sometimes this wheel's for 20 instead of 7. If I'm casting this for double digits, you've probably already lost, most likely. Yet again, there's a chance to whiff, but if you whiff with Mind's Desire, it's still not a whiff most times. If you lose after resolving this for 10 or more, you've probably done something seriously wrong early in the game, or somehow exiled like your entire deck, I don't know. There are not many games I can remember where I've resolved a Mind's Desire for more than 5 and lost. And if I'm resolving a Mind's Desire for 5, I'm fairly desperate. Recurring Insight, one of my favorite cards of all time in Commander. I used it in almost all my builds for a long time. I like to consider it a fair version of ad nauseum. Great to cast when you're getting pressured by damage. Great to just open hand and then just tutor for mana instead of having to tutor for ad nauseum. It's just a very good open hand card. Great to wheel into off of a Time Spiral if you're using Spiral Tide as your opening line. Very, very powerful. Time Spiral is another wheel in this deck. It's a wheel that can literally ramp us mana with our High Tide. In fact, it can ramp us up to an additional 12 mana if we cast the High Tide twice. It's very easy to just cast a hand with High Tide and Spiral into it, maybe cast a couple cards in between, and then untap into a tutor and just win with this card. Very, very easy. Mind Over Matter is a perfect hit after ad nauseum because it pretty much gives you infinite mana when you draw that many cards. It's great for casting, for binning cards that you don't need for value. As we talked about, there's many cards you don't need at a certain stage of the game. You can just bin it for extra mana and then wheel out. It can untap things like Gilded Lotus for 3 a tap. Pretty much you can turn any card in your hand into a Black Lotus, which is fairly strong. It's the kind of card that when it resolves, if we're not there yet, then it's because we have absolutely no draw or tutor in our hand somehow, because once you have this infinite mana battery, it's pretty much just time to win. You can untap Candelabra with it. You can untap lands that have been high-tided for double. It pretty much serves a similar purpose to Tidespout Tyrant, not to such an extreme, but at a cheaper mana cost. Tidespout Tyrant is what makes our Storm go infinite. We can bounce a plethora of different 0-drops or 1-drops or anything that their combined cost is either even or produces mana.